This lesson is all about bronzing and brows. Let's get right into it. So what I noticed over the years is that when I use a pencil and I set it with a powder, it looks more like hair. So your body heat changes the texture of makeup. Your body heat can either make makeup look more organic in the case of a concealer or a foundation, but it also can oxidize a product like it does a pencil. So for me, I always want to make sure that I'm setting the pencil with something. Turn this way. So one thing I've noticed is that, well, this is kind of like the school that I came from, is that you should always go cooler with your eyebrows. And when I say go cooler, it doesn't matter if you have red hair. Never go red or too warm in the eyebrow area. It's never flattering in photos and never looks great in video. So that's always a rule of thumb. Go cooler or a little bit ashier with your brows. And then a lot of people like to ask me, well, Sir John, do you feel like you should match your hair color to your brow pencils, or match your hair to your brow? And I don't believe you necessarily have to. So if you guys look back at history, because we're history buffs here, right? We love history, we love a moment. If you look at the 70s, so if you look at like the factory girl, Andy Warhol persona, like Edie Sedgwick, she would have blonde hair, platinum blonde hair, and darker brows. So that kind of thing it complements the eyes. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. So contrast around the eyes, in the case of the brows, is an okay thing. So in this case, I'm gonna go a little softer. Even though Shay's hair is deeper, I'm gonna go to a softer, like a honey brown. But I don't wanna go too blonde. And some people do like to bleach the brows. I do love a bleached brow as well, but in this case, I just want them to be a step lighter than her lashes.
Say, for instance, you have a client with no brows and they want a brow. How do you begin creating a shape for the brow, and how do you know where to map the brow on the face? So
this is when I have a really serious hack for you here. And so everyone knows me for using glue as eyebrow gel. So I like to use a stick glue, or an Elmer's glue stick, or Pritt stick if you're in England or Europe. And I'll use it and I'll brush it onto the brows, and it gives me, once it dries, it gives me something to draw on top of. So if you have friends, or if you have a family member or a client who maybe is in chemo or doesn't have any hair on their brows because they tweezed too much in the 90s, that's a really great alternative. It's a great hack, and women love it. It washes off really easily, and it doesn't take out any of their hair.
How would you go about having a darker brow with lighter hair, and is it not contradicting?
So yeah, I think it's really cool. It's kind of rocker if you think about it. Like if we look at some of our favorite blondes in history, like Brigitte Bardot, Marlene Dietrich, all these girls, they really get into a habit at some point of loving their roots, or loving the darkness in the roots. So if you have a blonde and she is okay with having a bit of, a darker or deeper root, a la Sarah Jessica Parker, all these women, it's okay to go really deep in the brows. It's okay to go, not black, but go into a cool brown. And it just looks really anchored in the moment, it looks modern, and it really accentuates the eyes. If you are working with a client and she's platinum blonde from the root on, very much like Marilyn Monroe kind of thing, don't go too dark, because there's nothing to anchor it. There's no hair in the center to anchor that. So if you notice, I'm basically working upward and outward, and I'm not using any concealer to set this. I'm not using any concealer to set these brows. Do you see what I'm talking about here? Okay, I'm gonna say it again. I'm not using any concealer, and the reason I'm not is because I'm confident enough to leave the arch alone. We don't necessarily need to lean in with even more structure to the brow. I'll use a tinted brow gel just to lift the brows a little in terms of color.
What color are you using?
I'm using a tinted brow gel that happens to be like a fair, like a light brown, a light brown, and then just upward and outward. But I just don't want too much product. I want to make sure we use as minimal product as possible. I love brows, but you want the joy of a brow. A brow is hair. It's just strategically placed hair, and so it should look like hair. It should look like stringy pieces of hair. So even if you feel like your brow is too blocky or you've done too much, Go in and give yourself a couple individuals, just like we would do a lash.
What helps you decide whether you're gonna just use a clear brow gel or a tinted gel?
That's a really good question. So at times, I'll just do a clear gel if I don't usually do glue, because I always do glue. But I'll use a clear gel when I just want to get through it. But if I really want to lift the color, that's when I'll go for a tint. I'll go for a tint when I want to lift the color or deepen the color. Okay. But when I want to keep it where it is, I'll just go for a clear. So guys, even though I'm just doing brows and bronzing, there's something about Shay's eye right now that I really want to pay attention to, and I want to show you guys just a quick tip. So I'm using basically a foundation that's maybe 2 shades deeper than her complexion. It's all over the lid, and I'm going to give her a really, really quick glossy eye. I feel like it's an editorial thing. I always do. People know me for it, and I just want to show you how I do it. That's it. Okay. So if you notice, I'm taking a color that looks like just a soft brown, a deeper color. Close your eyes. And I'm tapping this all over the lid. And this is something you can do in no time flat on yourself, or you can give a client this. They love it. It looks really great in photos. And also magazines love this. This is really great editorial makeup because it looks really great with all wardrobes. So I'm using a tiny bit of an 8-hour cream, which is a really light reflective balm. And then I'm using a flat brush. I love to use a flat brush for for emollient products, and we're gonna go directly onto the balls of the eye. Close your eyes. So this is like a 2-minute eye you can do really quickly in a pinch. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna go directly into bronzing. So I just gave her a really quick editorial eye, which is a bit of gloss, just so it can catch the light in a nice way. And so now I'm gonna show you how to give her a beautiful glow and make her look golden and that kind of thing. It's really popular. No one ever shies away from a glowing complexion, so let's give it to her now. Okay. Okay, so for a glowing complexion, I'm gonna go for something. So Shay happens to be a beautiful medium complexion, you know, in terms of like the melanin spectrum. And so what I wanna do is, I'm not contouring, I'm not gonna start to go into shapes, but I wanna create a beautiful halo of sun on the face. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a product that may be a deeper than her complexion, maybe a shade deeper than Shay's complexion, but it's warmer. So if you guys remember earlier, I talked to you about cooler colors and what they do. But since I'm working with warmer colors now, it's gonna give me the opposite effect, and not so much sculpt, but offer like health and vitality and warmth. So turn this way to me, profile. Perfect. So in the same direction, I'm gonna go with a big fluffy brush. If you notice, I'm using a blush brush. And if you notice, where's my hand? It's farther down. Bam. And so we're gonna go, and I'm starting to work this all along the hairline.
When did bronzing become popular?
Well, that's a really good question. So bronzing became popular, I wanna say, this is the thing. So in the 20th century, it wasn't popular to be tan. And so many points and places in the world, still to this day, in certain cultures, it's not popular to look like you've had too much sun. So, and that goes into a little bit of the colonization of beauty. And we're all running away from wanting to be a deeper complexion, which is trauma. And that's a whole different conversation that we can have at another point. But for now, I wanna leave you with this, is that in the last 10 years, it's become $1 billion business. So bronzing, tanning, and having a fake or a faux sense of melanin is now a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar business. And I don't think it's ever gonna go back in the opposite direction. So it's new, it's popular, it's not something that you saw, in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s, because they were very obsessed with staying away from the sun. If you notice, a lot of cultures now, even to this day, they wear umbrellas or they take umbrellas in the sun. It doesn't look, it's not flattering. Even their grandmothers would tell them, stay out of the sun, stay away from getting darker. That's not the goal. But I think right now we love the sun. We're a sun-obsessed people. So it has a different perspective. So guys, I have a question for you. Is there a time, or have you seen movies, or do you know of cultures that, where the older generation makes their younger generation shy away from getting a tan, or it's looked down upon? Talk to me.
Definitely, I'm East African, so being African, that is something that that they look down on being dark, or they're constantly trying to lighten the skin or be a little more fair. I've noticed that in African countries. I don't know about other cultures and countries.
Yeah, I could also say from being Jamaican, a lot of Jamaican women like to bleach their skin. So it's like if they're a complexion, they'll like bleach their skin and try to make it lighter just so that like their foundation could be lighter. And also working at MAC, a lot of times you'll have in different African women or different ethnicities come in, and when you match them to their tone, they don't really like it because they want to be lighter.
Yes, I had that happen to me. It was, she was an Indian woman, and she explained to me how she wanted to be about 4 shades lighter, and how it was pretty much like that's how they do it in India, and that's the way. Yeah.
And then also in Asia as well. Everyone walks around with umbrellas. Have you guys seen that? So if you think about it, we're hitting something deep here. And so it's not your imagination. And it comes from, where does it come from? It comes from a place where, when you know better, you do better. So I'll just say it like that. And so doing better in this instant is actually embracing your melanin and embracing the sun and embracing, mind you, I want you to always protect your skin from the sun. It's important that we all use UVA or UVB or SPF every single day. I use SPF even in the wintertime. But I don't think that we should shy away from, as a culture, as a society, having a deeper complexion, having more melanin, having more pigment. So I feel like that's sort of the toxicity of yesteryear, that's still residue now that we can start to either disdain or walk away from.
So if you do have a client and they're requesting multiple shades lighter, how do you go about doing that? Do you honor their request? Do you talk them into, no, this is your shade, or what exactly?
Yeah, so earlier in my career, I would do weddings at times, or I would be working at a makeup counter or a department store, and you get into a conversation with someone. But guys, to be honest with you, and I'm gonna say this with all sincerity, there's no way you're gonna be able to talk someone out of that. So that's a conversation that once someone starts to go into that, it's so deep rooted in culture and their psyche and how they see themselves, that the best thing you can do is either walk away or refer them to someone else for help, because it's deeper than you guys have the knowledge to even be able to. You don't have the tools. I don't have the tools.
Besides the coolness and the warmth in the products, is there any other difference between contouring and bronzing?
Yes. So contouring is offering a sense of depth. So contouring is going to be sculpting and contouring is literally there to make the face, gives it shapes, structure, and it's to play with lighting and absorb light. So for me, right now, what I'm doing in terms of bronzing and highlighting is to reflect light. So right now, I want her skin to beam instead of to be gaunt. So when I say, I don't want to look for angles as much as I want to look for brilliance right now. And I'll show you how.
So would there be a difference in product placement, or would it be the same places that you applied each steps in the same places, just different products, or how do you go about that?
Similar product placement, but so when someone becomes a bit more fair, so for example, I could have, just say if I had an Eastern European model, and I could use the same woman and give her a bronzy look, doing the same placement with different products, and then give her a structured look, taking away the warmth and just creating shadows, So it's just almost like a juxtaposition of what is more important for you that day. So guys, if you notice right now, so we have a cream base, a bit of cream bronzer everywhere, and all it is a deeper foundation that happens to be warmer, and then I'm gonna set this with a powder bronzer. We always set every liquid that we do with the...
Do you always use a cream and then a powder? Will you ever just use a powder and no cream, or the two just marry together? So.
That's a really good question. So Sam Fine taught me to always use a cream. So the thing is, I could use a powder, but a powder is so temporary. So just for example, just say she ran to the door to go to check the mailbox, or she had a package coming, or maybe if she's hormonal, or maybe if she went into a hot subway car in New York City in Manhattan, that powder is going to dissipate in seconds. But if you anchor it with a powder, if you anchor it with a cream like I have been doing today, it's going to make you, no matter what happens, she's going to have that look. So I always want you to get into a habit of using duality. And I didn't learn this, guys, until I started working and doing concerts and realized it matters. Right? So one thing is, I'm gonna add just a hair of like a coral blush, because I really want to bring, if you guys can see what I see really beautiful like honey undertones to her complexion. So I want to bring that to life with just a little bit of orange, but I'm not going to make it literal. It's not going to be a literal orange. It's going to be a faint wash. So guys, I love cream blush. Cream blush is one of my favorite products to use. And a lot of people are fearful of cream blush because they feel like, oh, it's oily, it'll clog my pores. There's no oil in here at all. There's possibly more oil in your foundation than it is in cream blush. And so what I like to do with it, it just looks organic, it looks natural, it looks lived in. And at times a matte blush can just look too costumey or too makeup-y. And so if you notice, I'm taking a little bit of my blush and just going in the cheeks, but also in the temples as well. Don't be afraid to hit the temples with blush. It just looks like she fell into really good lighting, or is having a really good day, or had a great night.
When it comes to playing with creams or using creams and powders, is there a rule, or do you suggest not to use creams once you've set the full face? Or I should also ask, say your client tears up and she has a streak going down her face where the tear picked up all the product. How do you go about building up back your canvas without starting all over?
That's a really good point. So as these textures mix, as water happens to slide down the face, a tear, and everything is set with matte, what do? So the best thing I think you can do is keep a wet beauty blender around. So what I want you to do, I want you to start, not to immerse the face with water, but get into a habit of having something like this, which is like a magic eraser, which will dampen the area around, which will allow you to fuse the skin back together without having a big dry streak or trying to matte down a tear. So get into a habit of always having a big wet age sponge. It's like your magic eraser. It'll help you blend your complexions together, fuse things together that usually you would have to take makeup off and start over again. So now what I'm gonna do is, this is kind of my favorite part. This is like the icing on the cake. So we're gonna do a little bit of highlighter, and then this is gonna seal our look off and we're gonna be done. So what I wanna do is go profile for me, love. I'm gonna grab a little bit of I have a gold highlighter here that I like to use, and I'm gonna go with my ring finger. Guys, so your ring finger is the weakest finger you have. It's gonna pick up the least amount of product. Your index finger, you don't wanna use your index finger for eye cream. You don't wanna use your index finger for your concealer. It's too strong, it's too aggressive. So I like to use the weakest finger because it's softer, okay? So I'm gonna use this finger, and I'm gonna work to apply highlighter. And guys, you've probably seen me in photos of me doing this all the time. It's kind of like my thing. Eyes up and chin down slightly. Perfect. So I'm gonna go directly on the sides of the face. I want you to be really strategic with highlighter as possible. So highlighter does not belong everywhere, and I'll show you why. So you can be shiny on the sides of the face, but as soon as she turns back in front of the camera, I'm gonna show you where it should stop. Because after a certain point, even the most beautiful highlighter can just look like greasy skin. And turn this way. If you notice, I'm stopping at the pupils. So when you get to the pupils, there should be no shimmer in the front of the apples of the cheek. And that's strategically placing highlighter. So for example, during concerts, I would go really glowy everywhere, but making sure I realize that as soon as my person looks directly into the camera, it's mattified in the T-zone. And turn away from me again. Eyes up. And so I like to use a liquid. A lot of people say, oh, well, why don't you use powder highlights? But an emollient highlight, this is an emollient highlight, a cream, always looks more natural. It looks more radiant. It looks like it's skin. It looks like it's a great moisturizer or she just left the spa. I'm gonna take a little bit of this as well now. And I'm not a huge fan of using brow highlights, but I wanna put a little bit of gold on the bone, just a tiny bit. So I'm gonna show you guys a rule of thumb that I have. And the biggest faux pas I hate, so I detest, and I'll tell you this, and you guys know this, you should know this already, shining up the tip of the nose. It's never flattering, it's never flattering. I don't know how this came about, I don't know where I got this from, but we're gonna stop shining up the tip of the nose. It looks like you've had your foundation on for 30 hours, okay? So what I think you should do instead is take shimmer and go down the bridge of the nose, but just between the eyes, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you notice, I'm taking a little bit of shimmer or a cream highlight and directly between the eyes, just maybe tap a little bit of shimmer right there and then tap just so it looks natural. But that's the goal. The goal is just to mimic a highlight, to mimic light. So faux lighting should be natural. It shouldn't be so intentional where it's sitting on the edge of your nose like I don't know what. And you guys are laughing because you know what I'm talking about. And close. And I may even want to tap a tiny bit more on the ball of the eye here. And the same thing on the other side. So I feel like we're done here and we really gotten a chance to magnify her complexion. This is the easiest makeup. It looks natural. She looks like herself. Guys, this is the makeup that makes you money. Not always the big smoky eyes and the elaborate looks. This is the makeup that I'm known for and that they call for time and time again. And that's brows and bronzing. Here we go.